everyone. This is the Untitled.jpg podcast where we talk about art, movies, and anything that comes to mind. Today we have Tom Ralston, and he's a graphic designer and illustrator from Toronto. But he moved there from London, right, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
originally
awesome.
from the UK.
So, Tom, talk to us about like what you do, like how'd you start out, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on here, man.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Cheers. As you mentioned, graphic designer and illustrator. I've actually only been like professionally illustrating for a little over a year now. So for the last since about 2008, I've been working as a graphic designer full time. Ran a partnership with my friend. It was just the two of us. In the early days, we were calling ourselves an agency, trying to make ourselves seem bigger than we were and attract bigger clients, kind of blagging our way into it. But so I've spent most of my career working as a graphic designer, but I was always a kind of hobbyist drawer, illustrator. It's since 2011 I've been really kind of posting stuff online and just seeing if anyone would take any interest.
Yeah, man, of course. I mean, that's how it is.
Yeah, exactly. So in 2010, I moved over to Canada. And in 2011, I was applying for a permanent residency. Or maybe it was a little later than that. But around that time, I couldn't work. I had been freelancing as a graphic designer. So I had a bunch of time off. And I just decided I was going to draw every day, post everything I made. And that's kind of where I got a bit of the bug for creating movie posters and that kind of.
So how do you find out about like Poster Spy and all of that? Like, when was your first experience with that?
So Poster Spy, I actually I've had a weird trajectory. So initially I was posting stuff. So back in 2011, I was posting stuff like almost anonymously or just on Facebook to my small group of friends.
Right.
And it's only really been recently, the last couple of years, that I've been actively trying to get gigs. As I mentioned, I was running this graphic design business and we shut that down. And coincidentally, around that time, I'd been doing an exchange of services with a friend who was kind of coaching me a little bit. And we were having conversations about what I was in a bit of a kind of existential crisis. I didn't know what to do. After 10 years of running a graphic design partnership, I was kind of like, what am I going to do now? And she was like, well, if you could do anything you wanted, what would you do? And I said, well, I just illustrate and draw all day. And she said, well, why aren't you doing that? And it's one of those moments where it's like, it seems so obvious in hindsight. But yeah, so that's kind of got the gears in motion. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your original question.
No, it's all good. Yeah. So did you ever go to college for art, or did you kind of just self-teach yourself and everything in starting out?
Yeah, so I did go to college. This is way back when. So I finished up school, and as a kid, I was always drawing. I was crazy into film. I loved movies. Just as I hit my teenage years, I started buying as many videos as I could get my hands on and just watching every film I could get my hands on. And the two sort of blended. My room was just covered in posters. There was no bit of wall you could see. It was just bands and films.
That's awesome.
Yeah, anything I could get my hands on, I'd cut stuff out of magazines, publicity shots. But even though I love drawing and I'm doing it for a long time, and I love film, it took me so long to put those two things together and really start to try and do anything with that. So because I love drawing, I did end up going to art college. So in the UK, you get this thing that's called a foundation course, where it's just 1 year. And it's kind of like you get to dip your toes into the water and just see if you like, you don't have to commit to 3 years or longer.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I met the guy that I ended up working with for 10 years. We became graphic designers. But when I arrived at college for that foundation course, I was just so blown away by the work everyone else was, it felt like everyone else was going through their like Picasso blue period and just doing their best work. And
Yeah.
I think I'd gotten in just by the skin of my teeth, or at least that's what it felt like. Everyone else felt like, it felt to me like everyone else had forged their path already. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. So I ended up chopping and changing. I did media studies and I did lots of editing, which I really loved doing. But I went there to paint. I really wanted to be a painter. And I think I was a little disillusioned by the process of college, the fact that I felt and I was doing pop culture stuff then, and pop culture stuff at college at that time was not really a thing that was done, and it was kind of looked down upon.
Right, because what I went through in college too was just like, because I was doing all of these kind of designs where I was just like doing a lot of portraiture of like celebrities and everything, it was just considered fan art. It was never considered something feasible. And so I get what you mean in that sense, where everybody was just like looking down on it.
Yeah. And I had, I was, and also I didn't know what I was doing. I was just clinging to things that I liked and trying to express myself, but I didn't feel like I had a voice at that point. So, I just fumbled. I had a great time there. As I mentioned, I met, my business partner is like my best friend, and, we both moved to Canada. We hang out all the time. So, and I've got friendships, from that experience that I wouldn't change the experience in and of itself. But at the same time, it wasn't right for me. I think a large part of it was just that I was a bit immature at that time. And then conversely, I didn't realize that there were mature students who were there. So they were a few years older than me. And I didn't have the kind of wherewithal to look at their work and say, well, okay, they've had a few years of maybe working professionally or, doing this or that. I just saw the finished products and thought, fuck, I can't do this. I'm out of my depth. So it took me a long time after that to kind of to get back into illustrating and drawing, and then eventually I got into digital painting. Yeah.
Okay, so then at least we have an idea of like what it was like for you to start out. Yeah. So I had the same kind of situation with college too, because you start out, and I don't know if it was like for you too, where like you're in your own small town, so it's like a little bubble, and you think you're one of the best people out there, like doing all the work, but then you go into college and now you're in a bigger melting pot with all these other greater artists, and again with people older than you too, because anybody can go to college at any point. So yeah, I like definitely did the same thing, where it was just like, it was more of a shell shock, where it was just like, oh, I gotta step my game up kind of thing,
Totally.
But for me,
Sorry, go ahead.
But for me, like college was more of like a networking kind of thing for me. That's where I got a lot of the benefits from.
Yeah. Well, I think I was so disillusioned that I spent a lot of time down the pub and just, handing in projects that I knew were half-assed, but but yeah, like I learned so much there that wasn't from the teachers. I still admired what other people were doing, and I saw their work ethic. And it also, like you say, the small town thing, like, having come from school where, part of my identity was as the guy who draws, or the guy who gets in trouble in class because he's sat there drawing when he should be paying attention. You're right. I had that shock to the system. It's fine. I just thought of this is completely aside, but I don't know. Maybe it's an interesting anecdote.
No worries,
I remember when I was like moving into secondary school, which I guess is like
high school, and
it
would be like a high school for us. Yeah,
they had you could go for a scholarship for whatever it might be, art and design or design technology. And I collected all my drawings up that I'd done over the years, none of which were spectacular, but, I loved it. And I really wanted to get that scholarship. And it was me and another kid. And this other kid just did one painting that he handed in, and it was fucking spectacular. It was beautiful. And of course, he got the scholarship. It turned out throughout the year that this kid couldn't fucking pick up a pencil. He couldn't draw or anything. And his parents had hired someone to do a painting so that he could get the scholarship.
Way.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? Nuts.
That's, man, that's the worst, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
Did
anyway,
you find out if he got like kicked out or anything after that?
No, I mean, I think our art department was a bit of a joke. I just did my own thing and had fun doing it. I think if you were passionate about it, you did it. But I don't think anyone noticed or cared, or no justice.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. But I mean, I guess things happen for a reason. You end up where you end up, and that's totally how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just made me want to do better work.
Yeah. All right. So then after college, what was it like finding work, like freelance work, clients, all that?
Yeah. So I got lots of work, but it was all like photocopying and temp jobs. And yeah, it took me so having finished college, at that point I was like, I'm not going to be painting. This is not for me. And so I did a lot of temp work, and just it got to the point where I'd done enough of that. I was like, I have to do something creative. I don't know what. And then graphic design felt like something that was a bit more practical and lucrative, as opposed to being an artist. In my mind, I was kind of like had that fearful scarcity mindset of I have to do something creative, but I've got to make sure it pays the bills. And so again, it was actually another friend who was like, why don't you set up a t-shirt business? And he was kind of like, and I'll take some of the cut. And I thought, I can do that, but I could do it on my own.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, my buddy who I mentioned from college, we ended up setting up this partnership, and we hadn't learned any of those skills at art college, even though we had technically ended up taking it. The college itself had a really good graphic design program, but we had not taken that.
Got it. Okay.
We had messed around and spent most of our time down the pub.
From the pub, yeah. I mean, that's what college is for too. That's where you explore.
Exactly. So we basically ended up just talking to our friends and trying to get graphic design work through them. And it was very much fake it till you make it type situation. And by the time a few years later we had moved to Canada, we were getting jobs in-house at places. And my first proper graphic design job, I was hired as a senior graphic designer, just because it was through a temp agency, like a recruitment company.
Okay.
And they probably just put me forward. And I think at that point we'd done so much work that, I think we were pretty good at what we were doing at that point, but we didn't have any professional experience. So I remember, there was a day where I was asked to package up the files, and I was like, yeah, no problem. And then they walk away, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? What's packaging files? Do I have to print it off and wrap it up? Or what,
no.
And I just had no idea, and I'd learned so much about like the principles or whatever, but that kind of stuff you only really learn if you're on the job, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then every job is so different in what they mean when they say these things. It could be as easy as like, oh, package this, as in InDesign, like file, and then literally it says package, and you do it that way. But then other companies mean it a whole different kind of way. So it's just really, you got to work with it. But I'm the same way, man. It's literally fake it till you make it, and then just say yes, and then go to Google it right after to figure out what they actually meant.
Yeah, totally, totally. And you know what? In all that time, nothing ever really went wrong. I was never kind of caught out. I was always polite, respectful, and you have to know when to say, I don't understand, I don't know. And similarly, no one ever said to me, what are you doing here if you don't, I think as long as you are kind of affable and, polite and explain yourself, no one's going to care.
Yeah.
To some degree, we're all doing that, I think, regardless. Everyone has different levels of experience. So yeah, it got me through some.
Listen, man. Yeah. I mean, you got what you got where you got because of how you did it. So.
Totally. Yeah, and yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the amount of stuff I learned just in a very short period of that job, was invaluable. And I don't think you can learn that kind of thing at, college. I'm speaking specifically graphic design now, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, life experience is so much better. I mean, like what I would always recommend people to do is when you're starting out too, is just go to your like local shops. Maybe they need a new t-shirt design for their businesses. Maybe like the local theater can need like a poster design here or there. And you're not really going to build that portfolio without doing these kind of things. Or another thing I would suggest would probably be like, make up your own like prompt and then go from there.
Yeah.
Like you're being hired by somebody,
Absolutely. But, yeah. We did that all the time. And we did so much pro bono work to begin with. And also, quite honestly, we did that far too long. I think probably like 80% of the work we did was for friends or for charities or whatever. But that's how you learn. And also you pick up the skills of like dealing with clients and communication and all that good stuff.
So while you were like building up this business with your partner, did you have any other kind of jobs to like supplement that while you were trying to build that?
Yeah. So I think the way we did it is, and we had quite a neat system. I was fortunate it was the two of us, because what would happen is, invariably, first of all, we split everything down the middle. We had a very kind of, not a lot of people can do that. I think it's, in a way, it's easier and more sensible to sort of have rates, but because we were such good friends, we just said, look, everything that comes in, we split down the middle. It's easier for tax purposes, all that kind of stuff. But what invariably happened is we had different expenses, and so if one of us was, running lower in the bank account or whatever, we just we'd freelance in-house at different places. So we were keeping that business running the whole time. But if we wanted to supplement our income, we would work in-house.
Got it. Okay.
Which, from an illustration point of view, rather, is, that's not something that you can really do without kind of, there just aren't so many in-house illustration gigs, right?
Yeah, I mean, even like around where I'm at, I mean, there was like here, you just really got to apply to places, and there's usually they're getting hundreds of like applications in that sense, so they're always denying it because you're in just a pile of other illustrators,
Yeah.
So like for over here, you'd have to just get like a day job, like just to supplement your income while you're building your freelance like career,
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
for you kind of just started out doing just creative work from right off the gate, even like doing freelance work just to supplement your own business.
Yeah. I mean, so it was a 10-year journey. So I'm thinking back. I mean, I should put it in perspective. We started out working in our respective parents' houses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was nothing. We didn't have office space or anything like that. So we kept the overheads as low as possible, and we did that. Not working from our parents' houses, but we kept the overheads as low as possible for a long time. And yeah, we were kind of, whilst we were faking it till we made it, we were also really kind of diligent about learning and trying to pick up new skills. And when we didn't have work, we were at the very least, watching TED Talks and stuff that was related to design or tangential fields. So we were always trying to learn and kind of push ourselves. And that was kind of part of the beauty of having a partner like that, is that, you're sharing things, you're trying to keep each other infused even through the times when, work is slow. Yeah.
That's great, man. So I guess because you started out so early on, right out the gate, do you really have like a definitive moment where you realize that that you can make career as an artist reality?
Yeah. So so you can make a career as an
yeah, you're doing it.
Yeah, no, so as I mentioned, I've only been doing this sort of professionally, as in getting paid to illustrate, for just like over a year. And it's been a really weird year. I've had so much luck and like more than that, sort of serendipitous kind of events, things that happen. So whilst I'm saying to myself, right, I'm going to be a professional illustrator, and there was a kind of decision that was made, around that time, someone reached out to me from Car and Driver magazine, and they'd seen some of the work that I just put out on Instagram. And at the time that I posted it, it was just to share it because it was personal sort of passion projects. But he said, hey, can you do that style for a half-page illustration for our magazine? And that was probably the moment where I was like, oh shit, this thing's going to be printed, and Car and Driver has a huge subscribership, so that was a big deal. And that set a lot of other things in motion. So that, if I could pinpoint a moment, it would be that.
That's a perfect
question.
Yeah, that's a perfect time to pretty much say that, you can make a career out of it. So
right. Yeah.
And a lot of questions people do have also is like, when they do get approached by like these big magazines and whatnot, they don't know how to price their work. Did you ever have an issue with pricing your work for that?
Yeah. So, it's funny. In a way, my whole career has been kind of backwards and slow. And, there have been periods where I had regrets that I didn't just go straight into what I wanted to do straight out of school. But the reality is that weird sort of journey of all these different paths in graphic design I also went to university and studied something completely different. But all of those things have actually helped in regards to stuff like, how much do you charge? With graphic design, I was in boardrooms with people like negotiating the dollars and cents on like projects that were, thousands and thousands of dollars, and, sweating it down and trying to show no fear and be confident when I'm, just terrified.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do is not so much learn how to deal with that, but just learn the sort of the industry rates. What's the value of something to someone who is a publisher, someone in comics, someone who wants a private commission. And the honest truth is, I'm still figuring that out. For graphic design, I kind of had it down. I had 10 years to figure it out. And I think if I've learned one thing, it is having the conversation and trying not to be afraid of talking about money. Because most people don't, I think we have this idea that like, whoever is hiring you or you're talking to about money is desperately clinging onto the money or trying to screw you over and I think the reality is actually quite different. It's just that we're all so afraid to talk about money that as illustrators or designers, we tend to say, yes, sure, your budget is fine, that's great. I don't need to eat, just pay me whatever.
Yeah.
And I think actually the reality is that if you, as the freelancer or the person who's being hired, if you are more open to talk about the money and say, well, I'm flexible to negotiate, but that is generally a little lower than I would like to, then more often than not, people, feel bad, or or they'll explain why their budget is so low. And then you can say, oh, okay, that is low. Perhaps if we work in the future, we can approach it from a different point of view. Or, you learn to, I mentioned exchanging services, sometimes that's beneficial. Or, so there's kind of tricks that you pick up along the way. And it is terrifying when you start out fresh out of school. And I certainly was never taught any of that. The information I gleaned was from, again, watching videos online and then sort of muddling through it and making mistakes. There's that thing in negotiating about leaving money on the table. Well, and I didn't even see the table sometimes.
Yeah, because I think what a lot of people worry about is just like the scarcity of work. They get someone interested in their work, but they're afraid to lose them because of the price, But then again, you don't want to be working for something like for a couple $100 and you're working day in and day out, and it's just not, working out because you got to pay your bills. And I think it's just, could you give advice to people on how not to be afraid to lose a job and still know that it's okay to lose a job because you need to make more money, that there's more jobs that are going to come out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I can talk quite confidently about this, but as I mentioned before, I've done so much work for free over the years that it's kind of ludicrous. But I think that one of the things that's come out of that is that how do I characterize this? Okay, I'll give you an example. Actually, this is a good example. So recently, I was invited to contribute to a charity project for a Star Trek related gig. Do you know Laz Marquez? I think his name is Laz Marquez. He and a few other people.
Yeah, I think I follow him. Yeah.
He's been doing a ton. He does quite a lot of horror. He did some really cool Nightmare on Elm Street art.
I think it's coming to mind for sure.
Yeah, he and a few other people put together this wonderful project for breast cancer awareness, I believe it was. And they got a bunch of artists to contribute their favorite female Star Trek characters. So this is a pro bono gig. I did an illustration of Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan, if you know, if you're a Trekkie.
Yeah.
That sent off. Got some kind of feedback from it, which is lovely. But beyond that, it was it was just as a passion project, and because it was for a good cause. But now I'm working with Star Trek because they saw that image, and someone there has hired me to do these comic covers, which is a dream come true. So I when it comes to doing stuff for free, I think this is true of all work, regardless of how much you were getting paid for it, is if it feels right and if it's aligned with the things you're interested in, and you don't feel like you're being manipulated, you feel like the person who's talking to you about it or emailing you about it is enthused and genuine, then it may not pay the bills that day, but I think some good will probably come of it. And then I think the flip side to that is to be kind of smart with your money. And sometimes you have to be a waiter or a waitress, or have side gigs, have day jobs, none of the stuff I'm talking about happened overnight. It's been years, and as I said, I've only been doing this professionally for a very short time because I'm naturally a cautious person, and I took baby steps. And I probably could have started doing a lot earlier, but I don't know. I'm a cautious kind of pleasure delayer type.
Listen, I'm the same way. I'm very I'm not a very risky person, but there are moments where I'm just like, you just go for it. But and illustration is one of those things where you can get big at like in your 50s and your 60s, it's just like, there's no like too late to join in kind of thing, and
totally.
The craziest one that I mean, it's not crazy, but it's just like what made me realize that this is true is just like when I was listening to the Drop Mag with Rory Kurtz when he was on there, and he was saying that he didn't really start doing this professionally as well, like until like his 30s, because he was just kind of doing it for himself, and it was his wife that convinced him to like get into it. And I was just like, that's insane. And because like I'm getting out of college at 21, and I'm seeing a lot of, you see your friends already having their careers, having families at like 25, 24, and then you're just there. So it's just like a lot of these things happen later on in life, and then you just got to keep at it, honestly. And even with baby steps, you're still going to make it. I mean, you're standing here telling us how you've done it, and you're working professionally now.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to that same interview with Rory, and man, his work is so good. And when I heard that, it was like it was what I needed to hear. I was like, yes, and also I feel a kind of kinship in that way because it's been a similar. I think he was doing photography for a long time.
Yeah, he was like doing like weddings and stuff in where's he from? Wisconsin, something like that.
I'm not sure. I mean, he may not be from this planet. I'm just who knows.
Yeah. Every time I try to figure out his style, man, and like he'll post like he did for the Wolverine for the Logan piece, which I got. Thankfully, I was able to grab the main one.
All right, I'm hanging up now. Fuck you.
I did not want to miss out, man, because I haven't gotten one of his pieces. I have two of Gab's, because he was my mentor in college, and I have his Blade Runner, which I got at New York Comic Con, and then his Godfather piece, which I got at the gallery show he had in with Bottleneck. I was able to meet him there.
Nice. And he was your mentor, you said?
Yeah. So the way that happened was our last year of college. They told us we had to find a mentor to help us with our final project and create our own piece. And that's when I was I
didn't reply to your email, I'm guessing, that day.
Probably not, yeah. Well, it was also like my senior year. It was when I got really into alternative movie posters, and I didn't I was just dipping my toe in, and he was one of the first ones that I saw because I was looking at Poster Spy and AMP, that big account, Alternative Movie Posters, that they have like a bunch of followers, and I was seeing a lot of his work there. And so I gave him a cold email. I was just like, hey, I'm a senior in college.
Right on.
I love your work, man. Ideally, I would love to do a movie poster for my senior show. If you have any time, please come with me. Help me out. And he was more than helpful on it. And he's the one that helped me make my Full Metal Jacket piece, which, I mean, with his help, I won first place in the senior show. So I was just like, thanks, Gabs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's not bad. That's a pretty good art director right there.
Dude, the best. It was so easy to work with him, man. And he's and like he's so like informative on everything, like compositional wise. He was like teaching me all these things and like showing me other ones that I could work off of, like just to get inspiration off. Man, it was great.
Yeah, amazing. His work is sublime. And his brothers too, incredible.
The brother duo is, and like they're so insane with like the amount of detail they go into all their pieces. Like
Yeah.
Gab's recent one with Lord of the Rings, and then all the color separations. A buddy of mine, Craig, he got that piece, and it's just, dude, intense.
It's nuts. It's
And he
nuts.
just works off pencil, and then he colors it in
Yeah.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Somewhere out there, his brother, is it Christoph?
Christoph. Yeah,
I hope. He's got a tutorial that was probably originally in a magazine somewhere.
Oh,
And it's
really?
online. And it's one of the tutorials when I saw it, like so many things clicked into place, and I was like, oh, it's, I don't know if you feel this, but some days you just learn little things, or you see
Yeah.
something, you're like, oh, I could try that, and that was one of the big ones for me.
The big one for me was gradient maps, and I just learned that like last year.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that blew my mind when I was just like, so
Yeah.
I'm wasting all my time coloring every little shade over my black and white drawing when I could have just easily put a gradient, these
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
then you like regret it because you're like, I wasted so much time in the past, but it's
Yeah.
learning experiences still,
Totally. And I think I kind of touched on this before, but like the wasting your time thing, I've also, like, a lot of the things around my, like, if I have a style or whatever, a lot of the weird nuances is the shit that you learn doing it the wrong way, I think, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you pick up weird little. I worked in vector. I did vector illustration for, I don't know why, but I did that for so long. And I don't mean like vector style. I mean, I tried to like paint like you would in Photoshop, but in
But with
Illustrator, I
vector,
did that.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I did that for years, and it had some cool results, but not really the way I'd recommend doing it.
With all those, dude, Illustrator scares me, man. I try to avoid it as much as possible. The most I'll go into that is when I have like a logo design, obviously. But other than that, Photoshop and Procreate is king for me. I mean, that's where I mostly spend my hours illustrating.
Yeah,
But,
we'll talk about Gabs and his bro. They as coming from a graphic design background, I am well versed in lots of like the kind of I spent a lot of time creating not typefaces. That's a little extreme for me, but logo types, custom made logo types, that kind of thing, and like tweaking things. But seeing the work that they do, like when I finish the poster, the last thing I want to do, oftentimes terrible, but I just slap on the type because,
dude, I'm the same way.
It's not good. It's not good. But they do this. They create like
they work with
beautiful,
it. Yeah, they just. Oh my god, man!
An inspiration, man.
Which one?
That's one of the things I need to get better at.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I spend all my time doing the illustration, and then I'm like, and I know you're supposed to think of the type in the beginning so you could work with the illustration, but once you spent all those hours on that portrait, you're just like, all right, slap it on, pop.
Yeah. I love rendering. I get caught up.
Yeah, exactly. It's just all the rendering, and then with them, they just design type for that specific poster. I'm trying to think. I think it was his Prometheus one that he like merged it with his drawing. Yeah, it's just a bunch of them. He's done it like that, and I'm just like so jealous. And like he shows you like his drawing, and then you still like trying to figure out how he colors it. And I think he was also on Drop Mag, and he was just saying like, yeah, it's just pencil, and then I use like multiply layer and then color layer, and I'm just like, but I don't get what you get,
yeah. Slow down a minute.
Yeah, it's
Open
just
up
like
Photoshop, share screen. Let's break it down.
Yeah, it's like it's like the smallest things they do, but they still manage. I don't know. The masters at their craft. Same thing with Rory, man. He'll show you like literally layer by layer what he does, and I still can't figure it out.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. I talking about Rory Kurtz. I actually hung up one of his pieces. He did a National Parks Rocky Mountain piece. And I had missed out on Logan. That was my consolation purchase. And it's beautiful. It's an incredible piece in and of itself. But it was amazing seeing it up close and being able to kind of really, you don't. The screen can only give you so much information, and
Exactly. Yeah.
it's cool to see it up close. Also, one other quick thing. You mentioned the kind of the age thing. Paul Mann is another. I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff.
Yeah. He does all his like acrylic or something, right? It's just like all hand painted, not even digital.
Beautiful hand painted. I also hung out one of his pieces. I got a Hellboy piece. But he's another guy who, I mean, it's different. It's not like he's suddenly he's been illustrating for a long time. And he's incredible. But his sort of online presence, career, whatever you want to call it, has sort of taken off in the last few years.
It's had like a resurgence because I feel like he's been working on like a lot of like anniversary pieces, like his Halloween piece that with the blues and oranges, dude, amazing.
Yeah,
I think
Mondo.
that was it was like a Mondo piece, right? And it was for like their vinyl, I think it was, and
right.
Yeah, it's just he's just having that resurgence of being able to work on these big licenses. But yeah, man, I love incredible. His work.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I can talk to a bunch of those guys, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, good for you for reaching out to Gabs, man. I know you had to do it through college, but it's such a good thing to do, and you don't need to have college. I mean, you
exactly,
have a podcast,
so
that's another way.
I could have easily, you could have gotten that without going to college. I mean, and that's what I really love about the community of like poster design, just illustrators in general. They're usually always like super easy to talk to and always willing to help out. And,
I've had nothing but wonderful interactions with
exactly,
people.
And it's always great to like go at a gallery show and then just meet even more people that way. Like Bottleneck, I was meeting a bunch of people there. And just so awesome. Speaking of which, I went to the Bottleneck show for Gabs that day, and it was Paul Schipper and Rory Kurtz all together with Gabs in one building, and I was too afraid.
In person?
Yeah, all in person together. But they were like all talking with each other. But I was just like, nah, that's not my time.
I'm not worthy.
Yeah, I'm not. That's master speaking. I can't join in on that yet.
I mean, I want to be like, why would they do it? But I would have done probably exactly the same thing.
Yeah. You think in your head you're gonna like walk up to the. Yeah, exactly. You think you're gonna walk up to them and be like, "Hey, my name is blah blah blah. So tell me how you work," kind of thing. But there's a time and place for everything, and they were really deep in combo. But,
they're probably talking about that weirdo over there who's staring at them.
Yeah, exactly. Why does he keep staring at me?
Yeah.
All right,
but you know what? That's the thing. You're right. It's such a great community, and obviously it's at a gallery show, but they would have been cool. Like Gabs, I've had tiny bit of interaction with online. And he seems like the loveliest guy. He always goes above and beyond. And Paul Schipper is now. I mean, he's the kind of the guy, right? It seems.
Yeah, he's the guy now for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of feel sorry for him because every time I hear his name, it's the Drew Struzan kind of like prodigy.
Right. But I mean, he was trained by Drew. Like that. That's who he came from.
Yeah. Was he directly trained?
I think. From Drew Struzan? I mean, I've seen like photos with him and Drew, and like I think there was a certain like part where he was like learning from Drew at one point. I think if I heard it right, but I mean, it's undeniable they have very similar styles, but but Paul has his own way, like it's his own style aside from that, but it has his obviously Drew's like influence, but doesn't take away about like how amazing his pieces are, dude.
No, exactly.
Those compositions are amazing.
Yeah, precisely. And I feel like you can tell his piece, and it's not because it lacks anything of it. Drew's work is.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows his work, But like you said,
he
yeah,
saw
you can
all of
definitely
us.
still differentiate between them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a
But
little. I'm very proud of this, so I'm going to point it out. Sorry to anyone who's just got audio on this, but I don't know if you can see over here, but I have a little Drew Struzan, one
oh,
of his original
dude,
comps. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I know that as illustrators, you know, it's not the most lucrative field, but you know, we all spend money on posters and whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like Galactic Gallery has some of his original artwork up,
That's what I was just gonna
and a
talk
lot of
about.
it,
Yeah, I looked
right?
at it and I was like, oh, maybe I could buy one. Not yet. Not right now.
Not gonna lie. I went really, you know, if there was a way of like organizing price high to low, I went straight
Go
to the low.
straight to the low. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm a big fan of Casablanca the movie, and this is an illustration he did for, or a comp for, postage stamp of the composer of Casablanca.
That's awesome, man.
Snap that up.
Wow. Yeah, man.
And I carry
it's
it around with me everywhere I go.
just be like, hey, look what I got. This is me. I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, that's a timeless piece, man. I would never let go of that thing for sure.
No,
especially with it being Drew, you know.
Yeah.
I actually got one of Drew's because Bottleneck was doing a print run of Drew's for Blade Runner, and I grabbed it, and yeah, it was like I want to say
you might not be able to see it because they're light reflected, but yeah, that's one of his signed prints.
Right. Is that 24 by 36 back there?
No, it's like 11-17.
So the one I got is like the poster, like 24 by 36, and it's his Blade Runner piece, and he I think it was like out of 1,000 prints that were made, and they're all signed. So I was able to grab one of the signed ones.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I could at least say I have one thing that Drew touched, you know?
Everyone should have one. Yeah.
Yeah. One little thing here and there. And then like a few months after then, he did the same thing for Back to the Future. And I'm like, damn. But I didn't grab it. I should have though.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like I spend as much money on posters as I earn through making posters. And
it's just the name of the game. I mean, it's just an investment on its own, man. I mean, you see how these posters that like Bottleneck and Mondo like come out with, once they sell out, they're already on eBay for like triple of the amount, you know?
Yeah.
Your investment.
True. Times get tight. I don't know if I can let them go though.
No, I don't think all the ones that I have, I don't plan on selling them to anyone, because they're just like any one that I do get is just, it means something to me, you know? Like that Logan piece, man. I saw that and I was just like, yeah, I need that, because I love the movie. The movie I think came out on my birthday, and I went with a buddy of mine, and I turned over when the movie ends. I turn over to him. He has tears in his eyes. I'm like, damn, that hit hard. It hit home. So I always remember
that might be my favorite of all the.
Oh yeah, I feel like of all the X-Men, I think that's the one that. I mean, because you're also getting the actual like raw like blood and everything, and like true emotion out of that. You know? Yeah. And they did that so well. And then with the ending song with Johnny Cash, man, beautiful.
I'm gonna have to give it another watch now.
Do it.
Going on the watch list.
Yes. I think. I watched it in the black and white version, because they came out with the noir. Yeah. It's a whole, and then on OLED, it's like a whole experience, because it's actually like the true blacks and everything, dude. It's so good.
Amazing.
But yeah, I grabbed that poster, and it's coming out during Christmas time, and I was like, I told myself, this is my Christmas present to myself from the summer. So that's that, you know. But
good present.
Yeah, for sure. So let's I want to talk about then your style, because then it's very distinctive from a lot of other kind of things that I've seen, and you're saying you kind of started out drawing like professionally only a year ago. So like, where did that style come from? Like who inspired that kind of executions?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words.
Of course, man.
I was, I have been and continue to be obsessed with style and with like trying to. Yeah, at some point I realized that this was unhealthy, but for a long time I was just like, it's got to be different. It's got to be different. It's got to be.
Yeah.
And so I think like a lot of people, it's like an amalgamation of, 1 month it's like Hans Woody is God, let's copy his style, and or like Tony Stella's like sparse, watercolor. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
chopped and changed, and truth be told, I think I'm still sort of finding my style. Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's gotten weird as well, because now I get hired for particular pieces that I may have done a long time ago, and because I was experimenting with a style then, if I may have to go into those files and see if I made any
and
notes
figure out
of
how
what
exactly you did it.
Yeah. I also this is a word of warning for everyone out there that works digitally. I recently lost all of my brushes.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. Which at the time was devastating, and I thought it was going to be a nightmare. But it's actually been fine, and it's it forces you to really think about how you work, and because I'd ended up just getting into a rote pattern of like this first, then this, and that. So it's actually been fine, but there was a moment where I was suicidal.
I thought you were gonna say that you lost like your drawings from back then, kind of thing.
No. Thankfully not. Although,
yeah.
I think I would have been more devastated with the brushes having been lost.
Oh man, no, I don't know, something with because you always want to go back to those old files. You never know what you'll find in there.
Yeah, that's true. And as I said, like sometimes I now have to go back and be like, what was I doing? How did I build this? Like, how did I? So in terms of style, I don't know. I like one thing I do like doing is taking more modern films and doing them in a slightly more kind of like retro, kind of painterly bubble and squeak streak rather style kind of, and then doing the opposite kind of juxtaposition where it's like an older film but maybe in the kind of modern style. But I also tend to kind of approach each property on its own merits, and I wouldn't do like Pulp Fiction, say, in the same way necessarily that I would do with Terminator or something. Sometimes it's the concept that, or the brief, that directs style. And then there are other times when I start with a style in mind, and I sort of end up doing what I've done before, and you kind of.
Yeah, I've been stuck in that kind of thing too. You visualize it differently in your head, but your like motor skills are just like the muscle memory is like.
It's like a river; it just naturally takes its own path. But you find you do a little, a little mistake, and you're like, oh, that actually looks like that could work, and you kind of build out of that. Or, but in terms of style, I suppose if there's one thing I'm doing constantly is, and sometimes this works more effectively than others, but it's trying to kind of make it look as kind of less digital and more painterly. Sometimes I'm like, why don't I just learn to paint properly? It would save a lot of time and effort. But then would it? I don't know. Maybe working digitally, obviously saves time in other areas. And there's an interest. There are tools, working digitally that I don't know. Like Tony Stella is, for me, one of the best poster artist.
For sure. I mean, just artists in general. I mean, like when you see his pieces, then it's him. Like that's like the kind of style I want to achieve, you know, where it's just people know where it's coming from, you know?
Yeah.
And I totally get
exactly.
what you mean.
Yeah, and he and another artist whose name completely escapes me right now. Coulon. Got his book behind me. Marc-Antoine Coulon, French guy. He does these like slight minimal portraits that, you know, the way that he creates them, they look effortless and kind of, and you just have to assume that would be easy to accomplish because it's 3 lines or, you know, light. And of course, there's nothing harder than that. And he and Tony Stella, I think, have that being able to capture a lightness and the quality of light in a way that feels almost obvious. Like, of course you would approach it like that. But if you break down all the elements, and I've obsessively looked at Tony Stella's work, but like, it's just magic being able to get those compositions and like paint and get the likenesses that good. Incredible.
One of my favorite things to do is one of my favorite things to do is just grab like an oeuvre. Is that how you say oeuvre of like all these different artists just to see all their work? And I'm the same way. I have a whole shelf of just that, of an ever growing library of just people's work. And it's like nothing beats just seeing it on like in front of you. Granted, it's still on a book, but it's so much better than on a screen, you know? And like being able to just nitpick it all.
Totally. Yeah. Books, you know, in the digital age, you know, art books feel a bit like a sort of frivolous expense when you can find so much of it online, but they're just it's so different seeing it in print, even if it's, you know, a replication of, you know, in print. It's still so much better. It's weird. Zooming in and out on the screen doesn't really translate to the.
I know, right? Like you can zoom in and see all the textures and everything, but for some reason it just doesn't click the same as if you had it like, in front of you in a book for some reason. I don't know what it is.
No, I can't explain it, but it's definitely a thing. So yeah, if you're interested in artists and you're studying their work, or you want to study their work, hit the library or find somewhere finding their work that's in print, because it's a world of difference.
One book that's in my list of like that I still need to grab is Akiko Steinberg's. I think that's how you say her last name, of her book. You have it. I still haven't grabbed it yet, and it's in my list of like things. It's like one of those things where if you have a disposable income, then you like splurge a little. So that's it's coming up. But man, speaking of like just poster designers just killing the game, man. Like she's just like at the top right now.
Her work is incredible. I
could technically say I have one of her pieces because she was the art director for the Logan piece.
Logan, absolutely, yeah. That I mean, I haven't read up on it too much, but it sounded like a wonderfully collaborative process. And it was on the Dropcast.
He was talking about it there.
I'd say that's absolutely one of her pieces. She's someone actually that I've had a tiny bit of correspondence with, and again, she's just a delight. She's been nothing but supportive and kind, and took the time to really respond to me as opposed to just being like,
Exactly,
but highly recommend that book, because I mean, there's a reason that she's at the top of the game, and it's like her compositions, her concepts, like I don't know, do you follow her on Instagram?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, her live videos are just hilarious, and I think she has just a unique mind where she looks at things differently, really differently, and we all have natural skills, I think, when it comes to, you know, for some people it's rendering, some people it's compositions, but she seems to have it all, you know. She can paint.
Yeah. I love that half her page is also just like memes too, which just makes it even funnier.
Yeah. She's great. She's great.
So let's talk about then, like, what's your workflow like during the day when you're working on a piece?
Yeah. When I'm working on a piece, it kind of depends a little bit on how it's kind of come to me, whether or not, if it's something that's like in publishing, or someone has, there's an editorial brief, for example, that's usually kind of quite fast moving. And I haven't had too many of any of these, to be honest. So I'm not a kind of expert in that sense. But again, I've had 10 years of graphic design experience, and that has sort of instilled in my mind that everything needs to be part of a process. You know, it's the same thing in terms of you start with a sketchbook first. And prior to even getting down to the work, it's asking all the right questions and negotiating a price. There's a website out there. Speaking of price, there's a website out there somewhere that is crowdsourced. It's like a spreadsheet of crowdsourced information.
Are you talking about Lightbox?
Yeah. I think that's
well, like that people just submit the work they've done for certain companies, like anonymously, so they don't get in trouble or whatever. I've checked that out.
It's been a lifesaver for me.
Yeah, for sure.
It's incredible. Yeah, people just say, okay, well, I've worked with this brand or this company, this agency. This is how much they paid me for this gig. And I've been approached by a couple of people and checked that and thought, you know, that seems a bit low. But then you can see that it's consistently around that price within that company, or that, you know, within that agency. And it's just a good way of knowing, again, coming from graphic design where everything is priced wildly differently, sometimes even if it's similar kind of things. It's so good to know that, you know, you're in the right ballpark.
Right.
And that if you want to negotiate a little bit more, you know that someone has in the past. You know, and these agencies and companies and publishing houses are the same as us. They're creature of habits, and they don't want to, you know, they'll know what the going rate is. So if they're pulling a fast one, you can find out through that. And I've had a couple of gigs that were on there. So that's a good resource. But I forget what the original. My process.
Your workflow.
Yeah, the workflow. And the thing that I have always struggled with, and this goes back to college days, is that I know kind of intellectually that the more time you spend before you start a project, getting the compositions right and planning it out and coming up with a good concept, you know, I genuinely believe that should be like, you know, 80% of the project, you know, not necessarily time, but like mental effort, you know, really thinking hard and planning out and getting your comps down. Now, do I practice that? No, I'm terrible. I do try and I'm better with, oftentimes if it's a quick turnaround, I'm ready to sketch quickly. And if it's a personal project, I will often tend to just be like, oh, but I have this good idea. There's no better ideas out there. I'll just run with it. Yeah. And then, of course, you start rendering, and then there's that moment where you think, well, is it too late to start again, or can I move this piece? Because that would be a lot better. Why didn't I think of that before? So, you know, in terms of like recommendations of how my process should be, you know, sketches, that phase, and not just sketches, but just concepts and
what I usually do in the beginning is just straight up thumbnail, and I do it on my sketchbook. I don't do it like on the iPad, because when it comes to ideas, I want to just get them down and really fast, and thumbnailing has always been my thing. Like my sketchbook is not it's not really full of drawings. It's mostly just these small concepts, like just full of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the way, man. That's the way. And it depends on the project, I think, and the time frames and the amount of pressure you have on you. Because there are those projects where someone says, "Hey, can you do this commission or whatever?" You've got plenty of time, and you can kind of noodle it around for a while.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think if you have that time, if you're working on it, it will also work subconsciously, and like even if you're not cracking the idea on paper, or it might sort of formulate in the background, I think, a little bit. But then in terms of my workflow when I'm actually illustrating, again, it kind of depends on the style that I'm taking, if it's more kind of line work orientated or more painterly. But yeah, sketches and comps. One thing that I think a lot of people, and I certainly used to be like this when coming from graphic design, is that you want to hoard your ideas and then share with the client when you feel like it's ready to be shared. I actually quite like having communications with the client either throughout the process or having a lot of conversation early on, for a few reasons. First of all, you really get you on the same page, and you don't end up rendering something and then them saying, no, this, you misunderstood me.
Right.
So there's that kind of communication element. But I think also, I learned this a lot over and over again doing graphic design, that even if a client doesn't have the first clue about painting or art direction, they're approaching you for a reason, and it's often not just exclusively financial, or they just need to get a logo or a painting or whatever it is. They're oftentimes invested in a different way, and if you can learn to take that feedback on, and invite them into the conversation in a kind of controlled way. And what I mean by that is not saying like, "Hey, what do you think? Open-ended question," and
you're right, like
with.
Exactly, because then there's always going to be changes, whatever you say,
There's exactly. There's always changes regardless. But I found just over time that the assumption that the client doesn't know what they're talking about is so often not the case. And I think I learned this. I did a lot of logo design, and I love designing logos. But I think a lot of the best logo designs I've done in the past is when the client has pushed me and they said, no, it's still not quite right. It needs to be better. It needs to be. And we tend to sort of, I think, stop at a certain point and say, okay, well, that's done. That's finished.
Yeah.
And there are times, not always, not all clients are like this, but there are times when your client is your best kind of advocate and the best person to push you to do a little bit more, and to think about things slightly differently. In terms of workflow, I don't know. It's hard to say. Once I've mapped it out, as it were, I spend a long time rendering. But then, I can work very quickly to it depends, really. It depends. So much of it comes down to the time frames,
Well, that's my next question then too. Like maybe that this will help, like kind of get the question down. Would be like, what inspired the design for the David Crosby piece that you got with Poster Spy? Like tell us about how that went.
Yeah. That was a great project, man. So, so Poster Spy put out a call for 3 artists to contribute to A.J. Eaton's documentary he made about David Crosby, who I don't know how old you are, but
I didn't know who he was. I just wanted to work on that.
Yeah, and he was before my time, to be fair. But when I was a teenager, I was into all kinds of music, and I loved Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So I was. It helped that I was aware of who he was. But in terms of the inspiration for that came directly from the documentary. And this is another thing you'll find in terms of working with properties, and is that you never want to crap on the property itself, right? You always want to be like, oh, this film is incredible.
Yeah.
Fortunately, AJ has made an incredible documentary. You know, and I watched it. I was kind of nervous before because I was like, oh man, I hope this is good, because there's nothing worse than that. Trying to share, you know, an angle of something and represent something when you don't really believe in it. But the documentary is amazing. It's very, it's very, what's the word? Raw. It's kind of raw. It's David Crosby, who's had a wild fucking life, and it's him. You know, he says in the documentary that by all accounts he shouldn't be alive. He's kind of been a drug addict. He's been in prison. You know, he's just had a crazy life, completely insane life, and he's had so many health complications that it's kind of a miracle he's alive. So this poster was partly for a kind of poster for the documentary, but also because it's his 80th birthday. It was his birthday celebration. So yeah, in terms of the approach, what I really wanted to kind of reflect was the kind of portrait of the artist in a kind of, so much of the documentary is him revealing, and it's confessional, and he's really sort of looking back on things. So there's this notion of the passage of time, and if anyone's seen the image, my kind of through route into that was he has this wild hair that he's always had, and he famously wrote a song about being a hippie called "Almost Cut My Hair," so his hair is kind of iconic to him and his personality anyway. But he also spent a lot of time whilst he was having these troubles with addiction and fame on the sea. So I wanted to kind of combine these ideas of the passage of time with the sea, which I think is a kind of big part of his life. And you know, there's metaphors within there as well, with the kind of I don't know, the idea of him. I don't know. It's a tricky one because I had to decide whether or not to show him as being a young man or an older man. Both of which have their benefits, because so much of the documentary about is him as a young man, but it's also him reflecting on being a younger man. So I thought combining his current look with this sort of slightly psychedelic feel of kind of 60s posters and artwork kind of has that sense of the passage of time. Yeah. And also in a less pretentious and more direct way of answering that is that, you know, there's the shot of him with his hair waving.
Exactly. Kind of like within the wind.
Film. Yeah. And that all stemmed just from that one moment where I was like, whoa, that's cool. That would look incredible.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of like the poster, you know, it's just like, what moment of the film do you want to capture that is going to tell the whole story of, or the theme of what you're going to watch? You know, that's the name of the game. And I mean, I guess you got really lucky that you were able to watch the documentary beforehand. Usually I know with like a lot of poster work, you will get like maybe just keyframes, like shots, and you don't even get to see the film beforehand.
Totally. Yeah. So the film, I think, came out in 2019. So it's been out for a while, and it wasn't on my radar at all. So I did watch it just before. But yeah, there's also, I think we all know that anyone who's a sort of poster artist or, you know, involved in sort of pop culture at all knows that feeling, watching something and being like, oh, I'm so inspired and energized by that I want to create something that captures some of that spirit. And you know, it's a way to live in that moment a little bit longer, I think. And I was lucky with this one because this is one of those things that, like I said, I genuinely enjoyed it. You know, and my girlfriend and I were just, you know, talking about it afterwards, and it raised more questions. And I was great. I got to talk to the director and be like, when this thing happened, what actually happened? What happened behind the scenes?
That's
he was
so
like, well,
awesome,
I shouldn't tell you this,
Yeah.
but, and I'm like, and actually, the conversation we had when we were supposed to be talking about the poster and I was supposed to be pitching ideas, I was just asking him questions about the documentary the whole time.
Yeah. That's so awesome that you got like, and I mean, even when like you get other gigs, you're not really talking to the director. You're really talking to like his team, you know, like the publicist or something, right?
Totally. Yeah. Who oftentimes have different motivations to.
Yeah, like they don't have the actual like they don't have the creative mind. They have the marketing mind, you know. So they're not going for the art really. They're going for whose name is on top first, kind of thing, you know. That kind of hierarchy.
Yeah,
that's great.
No, that was a really fun and kind of smooth project, which is always nice. And shout out to Jack at Poster Spy. Appreciate
Dude,
that.
yeah, he's been killing it out there, man, and just like giving all that support to everybody coming up.
I don't understand how he does it. Like, he must have more time, I think, than everybody else.
Yeah,
I mean, he says that constantly.
That's like his main business right now. Like, he has all his focus on it, so he has to make it work. I'm just like, it's crazy.
I know, but he also does YouTube like technology reviews and like camera. He's a photographer.
Oh wow, dude!
Yeah.
I didn't even know that side of him.
Yeah, neither did I. I became Facebook friends with him a while ago, and you know when you become Facebook friends with someone and you don't know what they look like, and maybe not Facebook, at some sort of social media, and you're like, I don't know. Yeah, he seems to be everywhere all at once.
Yeah, I just know him through Poster Spy. Really, like that's like through that. But he has a whole other life. That's amazing. But yeah. So speaking of like that Crosby piece, because I also have this issue where it's just like I never really know when a piece is finished. You know, because you're always gonna go in and be like, oh, I could keep going into that. At what point, like, did you know that you were finished when you were finished, or were you like, maybe I should have done more?
Yeah. You can always. There's always more tinkering to be done. You know, I've had posters where I know I should have left it somewhere between the last round that I saved and where I'm up to currently. You know, overworking them is definitely a thing, and I've actually been very like cognizant of that recently, putting too much texture in and kind of overworking it. And then of course there's underworking. Like the deadline is the biggest the biggest kind of line that's drawn. But I think that's come with time. You know, I look back on older stuff now and I'm like, wow, that's not, I didn't even bother finishing that. And I'm sure the piece that I'm thinking of, I was just like, well, this is a masterpiece. I'm done. And it looks so half-baked in every sense. I think there comes a moment when you start sort of questioning whether or not you're done. Sometimes that's from frustration. I don't know. I think the advice I would give is if you feel like you're done, stop if you can, and then leave it for a day or two, ideally, and come back to it, and it'll speak to you completely differently. And you'll notice the stuff that isn't working, and you'll see, or you'll just feel, like actually this is looking all right.
Yeah, I've had moments where it's just like I'll finish a piece, but then something in my gut is just telling me like, this isn't it, So then I'll do that. I'll wait like a day or two, and then I'll get back to it, and then completely change up the composition or something, and then until I feel it in my gut that I'm like, all right, this is actually what I want to show people. I mean, I think it happened with the Ted Lasso piece I just posted. It was just like I had like 3 different backgrounds, and just like none of it was working until I felt like maybe just a simple thing going on in the back would work the best, and I felt better about it.
Yeah. So did you post it and then change it?
No, I posted the one but it was done for like a week. But it was just like something kept nagging at me, like, no, you can't show this yet. Like, this isn't what you want to show.
It's like tapping on the window, being like,
yeah.
I'm not done yet. Yeah, well, I was just going to say, because the other thing that I have done in the past is just go back to old work and like, I think there's a tendency to sort of think, well, if I posted it, I can't change it. And of course,
Yeah.
that's not true. Yeah, yeah,
No, and
yeah.
then there's moments where I've like posted a piece and then immediately see something that I messed up, and it's just like,
Oh yeah,
well, it's kind of set in stone now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's a funny thing, the actual act of posting. Um, One of the things that coming from like graphic design, when you're about to share something, you tend to put it in a PDF, you map it all out, you know that is a whole process in and of itself.
Yeah,
And even if it's just for social media, you know, you tend to have, it just feels good getting it out there. But for me, putting illustrations out there or sending it to a client, um, it's nerve wracking. It feels so personal, even if it's not necessarily like, even if it's a
yeah,
commission for
exactly.
something that I feel a little bit distanced from. It's so strange to me to have the feeling of like, oh God, I don't want to hit send on the email or post on Instagram, whatever it is. It's a strange thing.
Any email I've ever written, like till this day, I'll like look it over 1,000 times and still feel like I don't want to send this yet. Something's
Yeah,
gonna be wrong with it. I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what it
I
is.
used to
It's
drive
just
my business partner nuts because I'd be like, can you reread this? And then I'd read it out loud and then I'd check it and double check it, change it, put it back.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's moments too where I overchecked it too many times to the point where I was just like, I still forgot something because I was focused on something else in it. You
Right.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it, you know, it could probably be a two-line, here it is, you know, invoice attached.
Yeah, we overthink it way too much than we give it time for. But
Yeah,
so let's
yeah.
see. So you're doing all this illustration work. What is success to you then? Like, what's the end goal for as a career for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's kind of corny, but I don't know, it's weird. I have goals. I have goals for a long,
Yeah,
I think at the back of my mind, just being an illustrator for a long time was a goal. It was just something that I thought was off in the distance. And um but I do. I mean, I've had some, and when I say some, I mean just a tiny bit of success, and I'm very fortunate that over the last year, I've projects have led on to other projects. Um, that being said, you know, am I having? Is it a flourishing career yet? No, but you know, I'm, as long as I can pay the bills, that's success as far as I'm concerned. The the fact that I'm drawing and someone is paying me to do it, regardless of how much it
yeah,
is mind blowing to me. Really is like, and also the fact that it took me so long to sort of dive in and have faith in myself that it could be a thing. Is kind of crazy. Um, so success, I don't know. It's all the obvious stuff, you know. I'd like to have a bit more of a presence out there, and you
right.
know, but I don't know, maybe not. Like I also would quite, if people are just going to pay me and I did it anonymously, you
Yeah,
know.
so as long as it's, you can live off your artwork, that's the name of the game. You're happy with what you're
Yeah,
doing.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I suppose also just like, I guess a bit more choice of projects. Um,
Yeah,
but then that being said, most of my work today has been sort of filmic, and film is the early love that has sort of stuck with me. So I'm getting hired on the stuff that I'm putting out there, and that's become a bit of a cycle, which is amazing. Um, yeah, and then I don't know, beyond that, yeah, paying the bills. I think one thing that would feel like a real kind of leap forward, and I don't even know how realistic this is, but would be having either an agent or someone who can just help manage a lot of the nitty gritty of projects coming in and out, you know.
yeah. So you can just
Because
focus on the artwork, actually.
yeah, yeah, exactly. and funnily enough, I actually almost I get a lot more kind of random messages from people showing interest in my work. And I almost fell for a scam the other day. Someone tried to scam me into. It's the best
really?
scam I've had so far.
Which one?
I did. To be fair, I caught it early on enough that I didn't, get into the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how easy it is, for someone to be like, "Hey, you like film? You like drawing? Come along, we'll do this project together." And I was just like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's great." And I'm glad I caught it. But it's even falling for that stuff for a minute feels horrible,
Right. I mean, I've gotten plenty of. I mean, I gotten the common ones where it's just like, oh it's my wife's birthday, blah blah blah. I love your work.
Yes, yeah.
I have a budget of $1,000 to like $5,000. Like, okay,
Right. Yeah.
There's that one.
I'll send you a check out today.
Yeah. We'll send you a check, something like that. And then there's the other one where it's just like, I've been getting this one a lot recently. It's we have a residency in Tuscany, it's like Spain, I think in Rome or something, Spain. Just apply for it. It's $90 to apply, but you'll definitely get it. And you'll have a residency in Spain to do all your work there and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But that film one that you got is interesting. I've never heard of that one.
It was just a little, I think it goes back to what I was saying about posting work, which is that if a graphic design project came through, there's a sort of detachment. It's not that I'm not passionate about graphic design. I am, and there's areas of it I love more than others. But the feeling of someone wanting me to draw for them or to illustrate something that means something to them, my impulse is just to be like, yes, let's do it. How do we make this work? And of course, you need to be savvy and spot those red flags. But yeah, that was the first time in a long time where I was like just ready to go all in before kind of like stepping back and saying, whoa, what are we doing here? Who are you?
Yeah.
Why is your profile picture so strange?
And those are the worst, man, because for then everybody else that like are desperately needing work, like that they desperately need money and they fall for it because they're like, oh, this is the next best thing for me. But I mean, thankfully, most of the time people see it before they get too into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So then we're coming down to the last few questions.
I don't know if I just answered your last question. So
no, yeah, you did. It's all about, living. You said it nicely. It was just all about living off your artwork, and making it that way. I always ask it because there's certain people that also, they want to live off their artwork, but they also want to have the fame with it, So it's just interesting to see like what people's goals are on that end, because then there's other people, I mean, like me, where it's just like I'll reach something, but then I already see something much farther down the line where it's just like the totem pole just keeps moving farther and farther away because you're just constantly, for me, it's just like the satisfaction. I'm just like, I need more, I feel,
Yeah. I think I that totally resonates with me. I know exactly what you mean. I think for me, the kind of I don't know, when I started out, again, specifically in graphic design, but I was so hungry for certain things and certain milestones. And, when they came along, the minute they're there, you're like, okay, well, next one.
Yeah, you don't like so living it.
No. And I think I've chilled out a little bit in that way. And it kind of goes back to the success thing. It's like, I don't know if I'm successful by anyone else's standards, but I feel a certain amount of like contentment and fortunate, kind of gratitude more than anything else that I'm able to do this. But yeah, and it's a cliche, but it's it's the it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? And it truly is, especially with art and illustration design, learning processes and I'm more excited when things kind of click into place and you learn something new, or you have a bit of an epiphany work-wise, or or you connect with someone, either whether it be a kind of like someone a fan or someone who likes your work, or someone who you're working with to create something. And those are the things I think stick around a bit longer than the milestones. That being said, having the goalposts there so you can see where you're going, that's also really important. It becomes less of an obsession, I think, over time.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing. Yeah, like once you've reached enough of them, you're just like, okay, we can slow down a little bit. But it's just that like when you're starting out, it's just that sudden urge of just hustle, of just full steam ahead until you get where you got to go and you're stable enough to make the money.
Totally. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, when I started out, I was so hungry. It doesn't help that, when you're young, you're looking at the people who are at the top of their game, and there's just that huge disconnect. And that's frustrating. And it's exciting when you do feel like you're getting somewhere towards it, even if it is early on. But yeah, I try not to get too obsessed with that these days.
That's always good to hear. All right, so coming to the end here. So any last like advice for any upcoming illustrators, graphic designers?
Yeah. So again, speaking from my journey, I think self-initiated projects are enormous, and I know that again that's not easy when you have like a day job or the luxury of savings to fall back on. But we all find ways of whittling away time, and I think I was certainly pretty diligent about setting aside certain social activities or staying up late or whatever it would be to work on something, even if no one was saying, hey, you need to work on this. And part of that is just also, again, like putting it out there and saying like, look, I made this, what do you think? Putting it out there in the world. And then you get some feedback and it becomes a bit of a kind of reciprocating thing. So yeah, I think like self-initiated projects are your best friend. And I think if you go to college or you don't go to college, even if you're in college, be doing that, because I think you will learn something from a teacher who's telling you to do a project, but I don't know that you'll always have that same level of passion that you would do if you're not sort of putting the pieces together yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And then in terms of other advice, there's a graphic designer called Frank Camero, and he said this thing. I heard this so long ago, but it stuck with me. It's a cycling analogy where he talks about train your weaknesses and race your strengths. And what I've sort of taken that to mean is that the stuff that you find hard and you're not good at and you struggle with, whether it be like composition or color or whatever it is, you regularly train on that. You practice and practice, and you just do a little bit often, keep working away at that. And then in terms of the other side of it is you race your strengths. So the stuff that you feel confident at, you really push yourself to do better, and to really keep kind of like, challenge yourself. Okay, I'm really good I've got color down. Well, approach something black and white, approach something, from a color palette that's so unlike anything you've ever done before. Invert your colors, whatever it is. You just challenge yourself for the stuff you feel confident about.
Damn, that's good.
Wow. Great. I wish I could claim that, but it's not mine.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
I mean, with me.
That's something I could hold on to now, because that's the first I'm hearing it, man. That's great.
Yeah. And then the other thing I think is talking about all the social media stuff, you can't get away from it these days. It's
Yeah.
part of it. Don't be afraid to share stuff. Even if you still, I mean, it's a tricky one. I wouldn't say share everything, but
Yeah.
if it felt good doing it and you're kind of happy, just put it out there. Just put it out there, especially if you're starting out. You will only get better, and you'll only look at your old stuff thinking like, that's kind of crap. And yes, it's on the internet and it'll stick around for a while, but in doing that, you're creating engagement. And even though algorithms aren't really quite the same as they used to be a few years ago, people aren't seeing and engaging with people's work in the same way. There's always people who, if you use the right hashtags, there are people who seek stuff out, and really those are the people that you actually want to have see your stuff, because they're already looking for something.
You're trying to build a niche.
Exactly. So yeah, don't be afraid to share stuff. Are you familiar with Carl Kapinski? He's an illustrator. I think he's English. Check
His
him out.
last name sounds familiar.
Yeah, the reason I bring him up is because he used to share paintings and stuff, and then he realized that, and he didn't want to share like his sketches or whatever, because they're sketches and they belong in a sketchbook or whatever. And he started to slowly share his sketches online, and he completely blew up in social media. He's already known established artist, but he's now got a crazy following because he just shares all of his sketches. And of course, he's incredibly talented, but I remember him saying that he was sort of afraid of sharing those sketches and thinking that no one would be interested in them. And of course,
right, yeah.
Yeah, and it really, if I've done anything in terms of my illustration career to date, it's just been sharing stuff online, anywhere and everywhere, and doing that consistently. Because again, I said that I've only started my career a year ago. I've been posting stuff online for a decade. So I think being consistent in your output and being consistent in your work, even if someone's not saying, here's a brief, here's a project for you.
Yeah, creating your own projects kind of, and just putting those out there. And like going back to then the sketches thing, it's just, I feel like a lot of people like to see that, because it's just like a more like you're going more into someone's brain, because you're seeing their ideas and you're not really just seeing the final piece, the like really polished out piece,
Yeah. Well, there's a strange thing in graphic design where, and I think it's kind of true of illustration as well, where sometimes when you show someone a finished piece, I had this a lot throughout the years, especially doing logo design. If it's really good, it just seems obvious that it would look like that. And I've had this weird thing where people push back on it because it's too obvious. It's too, that's what I would expect, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of true of illustration as well. If you show someone a really finished, polished piece, it can sometimes just feel like it was always meant to look like that, and therefore. But yeah, if you peel back the layers and show some of the process, people see that, they feel it,
Yeah, it gives it more of that human quality. It's not like, oh, it's already like it was just put together and printed out like real quick,
Yeah, it didn't just exist.
Exactly, like there was a process in making this, and not just put together, kind of.
Yeah. And then there's one more thing that I'd say about. Sorry, I know this is a long one.
No, right. This is the normal amount, dude. You have no idea.
Okay, cool. The last thing I'd say about advice is, this goes back to what I was saying before, is that try not to like compare yourself to where you're at right now with other people, anyone really, but particularly, whoever you're looking at who might be at the top of their game, or just someone who's older, or not even an age thing necessarily. We all come to things at different times and learn things at different rates, and I think it's so easy to 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 fret over why we're not there yet and what's happening. And I think if you focus on the work and you just enjoy the process, again, this goes back to the journey versus the destination thing.
Yeah.
If you're just looking for like an outcome and you just want the piece to be done, you're not going to enjoy illustration as a career. You have to learn to enjoy the sketching and the rendering and the concepts and that takes like patience. And it's the
patience
same
and discipline. Yeah.
Patience and discipline, exactly. And that works for the work itself, but also your whole career.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff, man. And it's it's a lot for people to process, but it's valuable information because you're working at it right now, and you're a pure example of that, of showing what discipline and dedication gives you.
Yeah,
so,
I cheers, man.
Yeah, for sure. So, last question. I want to know what movie recommendations you have right now and anything that you have recently seen.
Man, this is a tough one because for someone
Have you been able to go into the theater?
So technically, yes. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
But I haven't been to a theater. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and when she was born, there was a good year where, the thought of going out anywhere was insane. And then, and most people, of course, can do that. But for me, like, with my work as well, I'm basically a shut-in.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since I've been to the cinema. But I have a client, Bright Wall Dark Room, who are an online film kind of essay website. People create essays about their favorite films. They have kind of monthly themes where people pitch their ideas. And so I do some illustrations over there. And that's been awesome because I basically, over the last few years, I've gone into a rut of, just watching The Sopranos and The Wire or whatever over and over again for kind of comfort. And that's what I do. I basically watch the same shit over and over. I love movies in the 70s. So I'll just watch 70s movies over and over again, even though I've seen them a million times. But what's great about working for the site is I get these pitches that, I may get whilst they're writing the essay. But they're often for movies I haven't seen, so then I'll watch those, and they're always great movies because, people are writing about them.
Yeah, they're not going to talk about a crap one.
No. And you know what? Sometimes they do. They talk about kind of, slightly off-kilter films and talk about the effect it had on them as a kid or whatever it might be, but it's always interesting. And one I watched recently, it's not a movie, it's a documentary called Hands on a Hard Body. I don't know if you've heard of that
one. No.
So it's a documentary from, I don't know when, the 80s maybe? Early 90s? I'm not sure. Feels very timeless. Because even though it's recorded on old school cameras, low budget, crazy low budget, it's about a car dealership do this promotional thing where you put your hands on the car, everyone puts that, and the last person to take the hand off the car wins the car.
Right. Okay, I remember those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So this documentary crew film this competition, and that in and of itself is kind of weirdly riveting, but it also becomes this really kind of philosophical think piece about how people interact together and what it means to push yourself, because they do it for 72 hours, I think, something insane.
Oh my god.
Yeah, really crazy, and people get delirious, and they take breaks, but it's a real endurance test, and they have Marines doing it and stuff. Anyway, it's so much more than is at first glance. It says on the tin.
Right, like it's one of those topics where it's just like, oh, this is ridiculous, but then somehow there's just like a deeper meaning within it.
Yeah, it truly transcends, and it becomes about your fellow man. It's a really incredible documentary. Yeah, and that's probably, I don't know. And then I saw again for this website, Bright Wall Dark Room, Terrence Malick's Hidden Life.
I haven't seen that one either now.
Yeah, so he did Badlands and Days of Heaven.
Oh, okay.
Tree of Life. And it's just, it's not everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. It's very art house, kind of meditative, again, kind of philosophical.
Yeah.
And actually, Hidden Life is, I think it's like 3 hours long, maybe longer.
Oof.
And yeah, it's very dreamy, wandering cameras and stuff. So if you're into that kind of thing, incredible. If you're not into that thing, you're gonna have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I loved it, but his more recent stuff, I prefer his earlier stuff where it's a little more narrative based. But everything he does is sublime, really. Yeah. So yeah, check Terrence Malick.
I gotta check out the Badlands. Is that what it's called?
Badlands is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I have to check that one out. It's been on the list for a while.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really cool. From 1973, another 70s movie that I watch over and over again.
So what's with the 70s that you love so much?
I don't know. I mean, it was I guess it was that time of like experimenting, and I think, I don't know. It's a combination of stuff that has been sort of well documented, but it's these kind of young filmmakers who were given lots of money to explore new ideas, and they were kind of inspired by the French New Wave and that kind of. So it's a combination of, there's a kind of gritty realism to them where they're exploring real kind of heady, weighty ideas, but then they're throwing in like dream sequences and just wild stuff. I don't know. And also maybe I'm just stuck in that era. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro,
always great.
Those guys at their peak. Like, I don't know. 1973 is a year of like a bunch of my favorite movies. I think Papillon was that year. That's a great movie.
You got to give me a list of those movies then. Those like 70s. I don't. Yeah. There's very few that I've seen.
Let me bring it up. Yeah. Sorry, listeners.
Oh, good, man.
Oh, The Long Goodbye with Elliot Gould. That's a fucking cool movie. I don't know. I'm weirdly obsessed with movies from 1970. Mean Streets.
Mean Streets, I think I'm familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah. Westworld, Papillon.
Oh, Westworld. Speaking of Westworld, I don't know if they're gonna come out with another season, but those ones on HBO are amazing. Man. Yeah. Crazy good. Yeah, I really enjoy. I haven't seen these were there. I don't think I've seen the third season. I think there was 3. I forget.
Okay, wow. Yeah. I'm not up to date. I'm not up to date with anything because I'm still stuck in the 70s.
Exactly. So you haven't seen anything new, huh? Like,
yeah, I struggle. I have this all the time. And then, one of my big issues as well is that, I tend to cycle in and out of like The Wire and The Sopranos and Band of Brothers, Mad Men, and those, there's so many of those episodes.
Yeah.
That takes up
one that I've gotten into. Yeah, one that I've gotten into now is Money Heist, because I've heard so much about it, and then a new season just came out. So I think
I've seen the visuals for that.
Yeah, it's the one with the Dali mask, and then they're all in red.
Yeah, it's got an anonymous vibe.
Yeah. So it's like a whole heist. It's the whole thing is about like it's a heist at a mint bank in Spain, and they're basically taking hostages, like of 67 hostages, and they're all workers there. So they're basically making them print the money, unmarked bills, instead of just stealing the money that's already there. So the goal is for them to make like $2.3 billion, and it's all they had planned out for like 5 months and everything. And I'm on like the second season now, and there's so many different like problems that they face throughout it all. They have the one guy outside who's the mastermind called the Professor. It's great, dude. It's all so good.
Brilliant. Yeah. And is it Spanish or is it?
So it's all in Spanish, but with the obviously English subtitles. But I think they also have like the possibility of English dub or whatever. But
no, I don't know. I'm clear of the subtitle.
yeah. Like I was born in the Dominican Republic, so it doesn't bother me. I could like just watch it with no subtitles and be fine.
Right.
But yeah, incredible, dude. I think that would be something that you'd be interested in for sure.
Yeah, that reminds me. So I tell you what, the other thing I do is I will occasionally, depending on where I'm at in a project, if I'm just rendering and I know that I'm going to just be in a flow state and not have to worry too much about thinking about things, I will sometimes just slap a movie on and put it in the background. Yeah, no,
that's exactly what I do too. And or I'll just put a show that I've seen 100 times and then just to have something. Just to have something.
It's got to be something that you can listen to without watching necessarily.
Exactly.
And you have to have seen it before, because if it takes your attention away from what you're doing,
then you're ruining your whole flow state.
Yeah. So, and speaking of the heist thing, I put on Inside Man, Spike Lee's Inside Man. I don't know if you've seen that. And it's funny because the whole thing, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it, but I won't say anything except that I've seen it before. I kind of remembered it being good, but I'll throw it on. I just kept trying to work, and then I was just like,
that just happened. And that's what happened with this show, because even though I know what's happening with what they're saying, but it's like one of those shows where it's just like there's so much visual going on that it's too good to not look. And I work from home with my day job, and I tried to put it on today, and I just spent like a good half hour without realizing, just watching it. And I'm like, oh shit. So that I had to turn it off and get back in. Yeah. Dangerous, man, working like that. But with us, it's just I feel like we need something there, just so, because we don't make noise when we're working. It's a very quiet kind of situation, and I just don't like. I just need something going on while I work.
Yeah. It can be very quiet and lonely. I quite like solitude. I'm comfortable that way. But it's funny, since my partner has started working from home, she's, just in the other room, I do find myself just kind of getting on, standing behind her being like, hey, what's going on?
Trying to find a reason to mess with them.
Yeah. And I guess without having any, I've worked from home, with the exception of freelancing in places every once in a while. I've worked from home for like over a decade now. So I thought, I was completely used to it or whatever, but totally different having someone else. Yeah,
because now it's like adding something new into the mix. I just recently got this job back in July, and it's my first job where I'm working from home, and I haven't met my bosses in person. It's just all through like Slack messaging and just video calls, but like I don't even know what the office looks like. So it's very interesting to start a new job like that,
Yeah, definitely. It's a weird time to be starting anything. Do you mind if I ask what the job is? Is it kind of related to?
Yeah. So I work at Topps as a designer for them. So I've been designing the baseball cards for the company and everything.
Trading cards.
Yeah, dude.
That's a dream job, surely, man.
Dude, it's amazing. So fun. Oh man, it was like once I heard that they wanted the interview and then I got it. It was just like a dream come true. Card set that I just worked on. It was for the '86 Mets I'm not sure if you're familiar with like World Series and all of that stuff.
Only from the 70s. I'm not down with the 80s.
Exactly.
No,
All
I
right.
don't have the first clue.
All right,
I
so
don't even know cricket, let alone.
so the Mets won the '86 World Series, and it's like we collaborated with ESPN, and ESPN is owned by Disney and all that. So I was the one in charge of designing that 40 card set, and I'm a huge Mets fan, so it was just like on top of that, dream after dream come true. And one of the cards,
That's
Mike
amazing,
Tyson.
especially sorry, you've only been there since July, you said?
Yeah, July. And then my creative director, man, is amazing. He trusted in me to do this, and yeah, dude, it's just been fun every day. Like we just released it today. I worked on it for like 2 weeks straight on it, and we released it because the documentary is coming out. So it's 30 for 30 ESPN. So they had made a documentary for the '86 Mets because of all the kind of different crazy things that they did, because in the '80s, New York was very lively and everything, and a lot of stuff happened with the team, and so they're covering it. And I think Jimmy Kimmel was one of the producers for this, and he's part of the card set too. So I made a card for him, and we sent out the card that I designed for him to do autographs for that we'll be selling on those site. And also Mike Tyson was there because that's when he was really big. So he's like, all these celebrities are signing the card that I designed. It's just crazy, dude. Crazy to work.
It's not mind blowing. Like it's nuts. And that's there's so much to contend with this job. There's little stability. I don't mean that specific job. I mean just our industry. It's like there's a lot of scary stuff. But when you get to do stuff like that, man, that's incredible.
And that's what it is, and it's just like I tried to just start off as a freelancer, and it was just, I wasn't there yet. Like I just don't feel like I could start out there yet. So I like the stability of the job, but just finding this job now finally where it's just like I'm able to put my creative input and still have the security that I strive for. But the dream still is to then hopefully still live off my artwork and like become that freelancer, so I could just work from home and do what I gotta do. But I love it, dude. It's a great job. And also on that note, I don't want to kind of mischaracterize anything. Like I've always, there was never a moment where I was just like, I'm out on my own. This is, there's all stability. It's always a kind of balancing act. And I think like, the stuff you'll learn there, I mean, it sounds like you're already sailing, but, that stuff's invaluable. And I think like, it's interesting with this pandemic, with everyone being at home. I met so many people out the years who are sort of jealous of me working from home. And it's funny seeing people's reactions to that, because it's not all, it's not all positive. Because some people don't like it. They prefer to be in the office and getting that kind of interaction. Whereas I feel like for illustrators, we're just like in our element when we're by ourselves, because we don't want to be annoyed by people like while we're working, especially when you're in that flow state. Yeah,
totally. Or if you're a weird introverted hermit like I
am. I mean, I feel like we all are. But when it comes to like jobs and stuff, I feel like everybody has their dream of what they're striving for. Not everybody wants to be a freelance illustrator, and that's totally fine. But you could still get a creative job and have that stability you want and be fulfilled in that sense.
Totally. There's endless routes. I think as long, going back to the goalpost thing, as long as you're sort of heading vaguely in the right direction, you'll find that you'll get there.
Oh, hell yeah, man. All right, dude. I think we reached our endpoint. Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to drag this on any. So is the 30 by 30 ESPN stuff out there somewhere now? So we just released it today. So you can go to the Topps website, and actually created the banner too. It's on the front page. Amazing. It's just like today's been a very like busy day for me in that sense. But
man. Yeah,
so it's out now. And we're selling it for a week. You have 7. Cool. Yeah, so it's like 7 days to purchase it. Once that window's done, then it's in. I actually purchased one of the auto cards for Mike Tyson because one of my favorite guys, and again, Mets.
Oh yeah.
Mets Tyson together. I designed. Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, congrats, man. That's amazing.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. So yeah, check it out on the website. It's gonna be out there, and for sure, yeah.
Wicked.
All right.
Yeah, we'll do.
So let's end it here. This was amazing, man. Thanks again, Tom. This was awesome. It's always fun to talk to other artists and just talk shop, you know. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Where can they find you before we head out?
So probably the best place is on Instagram, which is at Studio Ralston, I think. I should know that now. And my website is tomralston.info, and you can see my work there. And I think that has links to everything else.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, everybody, check out Tom's work. Get into that, and thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers, man. Great chatting to you.
All right, man.